I trusted him. That was my first mistake. My name is Evelyn Chin. I'm 72 years old, and the day I signed away my home was the day I learned that blood doesn't always mean loyalty. Sometimes, it just means you're easier to bleed. But here's what my nephew Tyler didn't know when he smiled in my face and stabbed me in the back. I may be old, but I'm not done fighting. And before the story ends, he's going to learn that stealing from a desperate widow was the worst business decision of his miserable life. Let me take you back to where it all started. Back to the home I thought I'd die in. For 40 years, the house on Maple Street was more than walls and a roof. It was the kitchen where I taught my daughter Claire to bake chocolate chip cookies, where the door frame still shows the faded pencil marks tracking her height from age 5 to 18. It was Robert's workshop in the garage, still smelling of sawdust and motor oil 3 years after cancer took him from me. It was the garden where I grew tomatoes every summer, the porch where we drank coffee and watched sunrises, the bedroom where I whispered goodbye to my husband while hospice nurses moved quietly in the hallway. Every corner held a memory. Every creaking floorboard told a story. I was getting by. Not thriving, but surviving. Social Security and Robert's small pension covered the basics: groceries, utilities, the mortgage payment we'd refinanced years back when the medical bills piled up like snow in a blizzard. $250,000 still owed, but I was managing. Careful budgets. Store brand everything. But I was in my home, surrounded by 40 years of love, and that was enough. Then Tyler showed up. It was a Tuesday evening in late September when he knocked on my door, holding a coffee carrier and a white pastry bag from the expensive bakery downtown. Tyler had always been the charmer, the kid with the easy smile and the smooth words who could talk his way into anything and out of everything. He'd bounced from job to job his whole adult life. Restaurant manager for 8 months. Car sales for a year. Some cryptocurrency thing that went nowhere. His mother, my sister Jean, used to say he just hadn't found his passion yet. I think we both knew the truth. Tyler was always looking for the easy score, the quick win, the shortcut that would finally make him rich without the messy business of actual work. Auntie Evelyn. He hugged me like we were close, like he hadn't skipped the last 2 Thanksgivings. I brought your favorite, vanilla latte, and those almond croissants you love. I should have known something was wrong right then. Tyler never did anything without wanting something in return. We sat at my kitchen table, the same oak table Robert and I bought at a yard sale in 1987, and Tyler talked. Boy, did he talk. He told me he'd turned his life around, that he was in real estate now, flipping houses, making real money for the first time in his life. He showed me photos on his phone, houses with fresh paint and new fixtures that he claimed were his projects. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that my nephew had finally become the man his mother always hoped he'd be. Then he shifted. His voice got softer, more concerned. Auntie, I've been thinking about you a lot lately. Living here alone. What happens to this place if something happens to you? Do you have estate planning done? I felt my chest tighten. I have a will. Claire gets everything. He nodded slowly, like a doctor delivering bad news. A will is good, but... Auntie, do you know what probate is? I didn't. Not really. For the next 20 minutes, Tyler painted a picture of legal hell. He told me that when I died, the government would freeze my assets. That the house would sit in probate court for months, maybe years, while lawyers got fat on fees. That Claire would have to hire attorneys, pay thousands of dollars, fight off creditors and tax collectors. He told me horror stories, people losing family homes to legal fees, children forced to sell their childhood houses just to pay the court costs. There's a better way, he said, reaching across the table to pat my hand. A simple document that protects the house from all that. It's called estate planning. You're not selling anything. You're not losing anything. You'll still live here. This just makes sure Claire doesn't lose the house to lawyers and bureaucrats when, in the future. When the time comes. I felt the fear creeping up my spine. I'm 72. I'm not young. What if something happened to me tomorrow? What if I left Claire with a nightmare instead of a nest egg? Let me help you, Auntie, Tyler said. I deal with this stuff all the time in real estate. I know the process. I can make sure everything's set up right. That night, after he left, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Claire having to fight through courts and paperwork, grieving her mother while lawyers circled like vultures. Tyler's words echoed in my head. Protect the house. Protect Claire. Do it now while you can. He came back 3 days later. Then again the following week. Each visit, he brought coffee and pastries. Each visit, he talked about estate planning, probate horror stories, families torn apart over inheritance disputes. He was patient, gentle, concerned. He played his role perfectly. On his 4th visit, he brought papers. I had my attorney draw this up, he said, spreading a document across my kitchen table. It's simple. Just a formality that moves the house into a protection structure. You'll still live here. Nothing changes for you. But when the time comes, Claire won't have to deal with probate. The house transfers automatically. Clean and easy. The document was 3 pages long, dense with legal language I didn't understand. I squinted at the words, trying to make sense of the whereas clauses and the party of the first part terminology. Tyler folded the paper so only the bottom of the last page showed, a signature line with my name typed beneath it. You don't need to read all the legal jargon, Auntie. That's just standard boilerplate. This is the only part that matters. He tapped the signature line. Right here. Then we get it notarized. I file it at the courthouse and you're protected. Claire's protected. I hesitated. Something felt wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on what. Tyler must have seen the doubt in my eyes because he leaned back and sighed. You know what? You're right to be careful. Take your time. Read it over. Talk to Claire if you want. I just worry about you, Andy. I'd hate to see this house get caught up in legal hell because we waited too long. He stood up. I'll come back next week. No pressure. But there was pressure. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about Robert, thinking about Claire struggling to pay her own rent in Boston with 2 kids and a husband who worked construction. Thinking about her having to fly out here, deal with lawyers, sell this house at a loss just to cover legal fees. The fear wrapped around me like a blanket. When Tyler came back the following Tuesday, I signed the paper. He smiled, genuinely smiled, and said, You're doing the right thing, Auntie. Claire's lucky to have a mom who thinks ahead. His girlfriend was with him, a sharp-looking woman named Kristen who happened to be a notary public. How convenient. She notarized my signature right there at my kitchen table, her stamp making that solid thunk sound that somehow made everything feel official and irreversible. Tyler folded the document carefully and slipped it into his leather portfolio. I'll get this filed at the county recorder tomorrow. You're all set. He kissed my cheek. Kristen smiled. They left. I felt relieved. I'd protected my daughter. I'd done the responsible thing. For 3 weeks, I felt good. Then the courier came. It was a Thursday afternoon. I was in the garden, pulling weeds from around my tomato plants, when a man in a uniform walked up my driveway holding a manila envelope. Evelyn? Yes, you've been served. He handed me the envelope and walked away before I could ask questions. My hands were shaking as I tore it open. The words didn't make sense at first. Legal terms swam in front of my eyes. Notice to vacate. 30 days. Surrender of property. Then I saw Tyler's name. Not as a witness. As the owner. I called him immediately. My fingers could barely dial the number. Auntie. His voice was cheerful. Too cheerful. What's up? Tyler, I just got papers. They say I have to leave my house. They say you own it. What's happening? Is this a mistake? There was a pause. Then his voice changed. The warmth drained out of it like water from a bathtub. Oh yeah, about that. The house is mine now, Auntie. Legally. You signed it over to me, remember? That paper you signed. My legs went weak. I sat down hard on the porch steps. You said it was for Claire. For estate planning. You said I'd still live here. I know what I said. His voice was flat. Businesslike. Look, it's nothing personal. It's just business. I need to sell this place. It's worth $650,000 easy. I've already got a contractor lined up. New paint, new floors, stage it nice. I'll clear 400 grand profit. Maybe more. Tyler, this is my home. I've lived here for 40 years. Where am I supposed to go? Not my problem, Auntie. You've got 30 days. Actually, 29 now. Clock's ticking. He hung up. I sat on those porch steps for an hour, the phone still in my hand, the legal papers scattered around me in the breeze. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. No, worse than that. I felt like someone had reached into my chest and ripped out everything that mattered. My home, my memories, my safety, gone. Stolen by my own nephew with a smile and a pastry bag and legal words I didn't understand. I called Claire that night. She cried. I cried. She wanted to fly out immediately, wanted to fight, wanted to hire lawyers and sue Tyler into oblivion. But we both knew the truth. She was barely making rent in Boston. I had maybe $4,000 in savings. Lawyers cost money we didn't have. Time we didn't have. The next morning, I went to a walk-in legal aid clinic downtown. I waited 2 hours in a cramped waiting room that smelled like old coffee and desperation. When I finally saw someone, a tired-looking paralegal with kind eyes and too many cases, I explained everything. She listened, took notes. Then she delivered the blow. Ma'am, you signed a quitclaim deed. That's a legal transfer of ownership. You gave him the house. To reverse it, we'd need to prove fraud or that you weren't mentally competent when you signed. That requires going to court, filing motions, depositions, expert witnesses. We're talking months, probably a year, and tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees. I don't have tens of thousands of dollars. I know. I'm sorry. I walked out of that clinic into the bright sunlight feeling more alone than I'd felt since Robert died. The law didn't care that I'd been tricked. The law didn't care that Tyler had lied. The law only cared about signatures on paper. And my signature was on that paper, clear as day. Tyler started showing up at the house unannounced. He'd bring his contractor, a loud man who smelled like cigarettes and talked about square footage like my memories didn't exist. They'd measure rooms and take photos while I packed boxes in the corner. Tyler barely looked at me. When he did, his eyes were cold. This kitchen is dated, but we'll gut it, he told the contractor, standing in the room where I'd cooked 10,000 meals. Open concept. White subway tile. Stainless appliances. Buyers eat that stuff up. The bones are good, the contractor said, knocking on walls. You'll clear 400 easy, maybe 450 if we stage it right. Tyler's phone rang constantly. Realtors. Lenders. Photographers. He was already spending his profit in his head. I packed slowly. Every box felt like a funeral. I wrapped Robert's coffee mugs in newspaper and felt like I was burying him again. I took down the photos from the hallway, Claire's school pictures, our wedding photo, Robert holding newborn Claire in the hospital, and each empty nail hole looked like a wound. At night, I couldn't sleep. I'd lie in the bedroom I'd shared with Robert for 40 years and stare at the ceiling, wondering how I'd been so stupid. How I'd trusted Tyler. How I'd let smooth words and fake concern override my instincts. On day 25, I went to the bank. I needed to change my mailing address for the mortgage statements since I'd be moving to somewhere. I didn't even know where yet. Claire was trying to help me find an apartment I could afford on Social Security. Everything was small. Everything was expensive. Everything was wrong. The loan officer was a woman named Sandra, maybe 50, with reading glasses on a chain and a kind smile. I explained I was moving. She pulled up my account. Mrs. Chin, I see you're moving. Are you selling the house? No. My nephew owns it now. I signed it over to him. Her smile faded. She looked at her screen, then back at me. I see. Mrs. Chin, did your nephew assume the mortgage? I don't know what that means. Sandra's expression changed. She glanced at her screen again, then met my eyes. Mrs. Chin, the loan is still entirely in your name. The deed might have transferred the ownership, but the debt didn't. Your nephew would have needed to refinance or formally assume the loan. Did he contact us about doing that? Something clicked in my brain. A small light in a very dark room. No, he didn't contact you. Sandra chose her words carefully. Mrs. Chin, if the property ownership changed hands without the bank's knowledge, that could be a problem. Most conventional mortgages include what's called a due-on-sale clause. If the owner changes, the lender has the right to demand immediate payment of the full remaining balance. My heart started beating faster. The full balance? Yes, the entire loan. $250,000. Immediately. I sat very still. And if the new owner can't pay? Sandra's voice was quiet. Then the bank forecloses. The property goes to auction. I drove home in a daze. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I sat at my old desktop computer, the one Robert bought in 2010 that still ran Windows 7, and I Googled. I read about quitclaim deeds and due-on-sale clauses and mortgage acceleration. I read forum posts from people who'd been scammed exactly like I'd been scammed. I read about foreclosure auctions and redemption rights and what happens when a property goes back to the bank. And slowly, carefully, a plan began to form. Tyler had stolen my house with legal papers. Maybe I could take it back the same way. He'd been so focused on getting the deed, the ownership, that he'd forgotten about the debt. The $250,000 anchor tied to that property. An anchor that was still tied around my name. An anchor I could cut loose and watch him drown under. The next morning, I called the bank back. Sandra? It's Evelyn Chin. I need to ask you something. If I formally notify the bank that I no longer own the property, that ownership has transferred, what exactly happens? There was a pause. Mrs. Chin, are you sure you want to do that? I'm very sure. What happens? We'd review the loan documents. We'd verify the ownership transfer at the county recorder. And if the due-on-sale clause applies, which it almost certainly does, we'd send a demand letter to the new owner requiring full payment within 30 days. If he doesn't pay or refinance, we'd begin foreclosure proceedings. How long does foreclosure take? In this state? About 60 to 90 days from filing to auction. And anyone can bid at the auction? Yes. It's a public auction. Anyone with funds can bid. I thanked her and hung up. My hands weren't shaking anymore. My chest didn't feel tight. For the first time in 25 days, I felt something other than despair. I felt like a woman with a plan. I moved out on day 30. Not because Tyler won. Not because I was defeated. But because sometimes the best revenge requires you to look like you've lost. Sometimes you have to surrender the battlefield to win the war. And as I handed my nephew the keys to the home I'd lived in for 40 years, as I watched that smug smile spread across his face like poison, he had no idea that I'd already lit the fuse. He just couldn't see the bomb yet. Let me tell you what happened in those final 5 days before I left. Because that's when everything changed. That's when the widow everyone thought was helpless decided to become something else entirely. After my conversation with Sandra at the bank, I spent that entire night researching. My eyes burned from staring at the computer screen. My back ached from sitting in Robert's old desk chair. But I read everything I could find about due-on-sale clauses, mortgage acceleration, foreclosure processes, and auction procedures. I read legal blogs and real estate forums and consumer protection websites. I read stories about people who'd been scammed out of their homes, and I read stories about people who'd fought back and won. And somewhere around 3 a.m, with cold coffee and the ghost of my husband watching over my shoulder, I understood exactly what I needed to do. The due-on-sale clause was my weapon. Tyler had grabbed the deed, the ownership, but he'd left the debt attached to my name like a landmine waiting to explode. The bank didn't know the house had changed hands. And the moment they found out, the moment they discovered that the property securing their $250,000 loan now belonged to someone else, they could demand immediate full payment. Not from me. From Tyler. Because he was the owner now. He wanted the asset. Well, he was about to get the liability that came with it. But here's what I realized in those dark hours before dawn. I couldn't just trigger the bank's due-on-sale clause and walk away. Because if the bank foreclosed and sold the house at auction, some investor would buy it and I'd lose my home forever anyway. No, I needed to trigger the foreclosure and then be ready to buy the house back myself at the auction. I needed to have money. Real money. Enough to outbid the investors and flippers who circle foreclosure auctions like sharks smelling blood. How much money? I didn't know yet, but I knew I had to start preparing. On day 26, I called Claire. It was early morning in Boston, and I could hear my grandchildren arguing in the background about cereal. Mom? Are you okay? Did something happen? Claire, I need you to listen to me very carefully. I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Of course, but I need you to gather every penny you can spare. Every dollar. I know you're struggling. I know you barely have enough for yourselves. But I need you to trust me when I say I'm going to fix this. I'm going to get my house back. But I need help. There was a long silence. Then Claire's voice came back, quiet and fierce. How much do you need? As much as you can possibly give me without putting yourself on the street. I'll pay you back. I promise. But right now, I need you to believe in me. Mom, I've never stopped believing in you. I'll have something wired to you by tomorrow. She sent $3,000. Every penny of her savings, scraped together from birthday money and tax refunds, and the envelope of emergency cash she kept hidden in her freezer. My daughter, barely making ends meet, gave me everything she had because I asked her to trust me. That kind of faith is a powerful thing. It's also a heavy responsibility. I couldn't fail. Not just for me. For her. But $3,000 wasn't going to be enough. Not even close. Foreclosure auctions typically start at the loan balance plus fees. That meant at least $260,000 just to get in the game. Other bidders would push it higher. I'd need $300,000, maybe more, to guarantee I could win. And I had maybe $7,000 total between Claire's money and my own pitiful savings. I needed more. A lot more. On day 27, I did something I never thought I'd do. I called my church. Now, I'm not a particularly religious woman. I attended services occasionally with Robert, more for the community than the theology. But after Robert died, the church community had reached out. They'd brought casseroles and offered prayers and told me if I ever needed anything at all, to just ask. I'd always smiled and thanked them and never asked for a single thing because I was raised to believe you don't burden other people with your problems. But desperate times make you swallow your pride. Pastor Michael answered on the second ring. I explained everything, the trick, the quitclaim deed, Tyler's betrayal, my plan to buy back the house at auction. I felt small and ashamed, like a beggar with my hand out. When I finished talking, there was silence on the line. Evelyn, Pastor Michael finally said, how much do you need? I don't know exactly. Maybe 20 or 30,000. I know it's too much to ask. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. Give me 2 days. He hung up. I sat there holding the phone, not sure what had just happened. 2 days later, Pastor Michael showed up at my door with a check. $25,000 from the church's emergency assistance fund and private donations from congregation members who'd heard my story. $25,000 from people I barely knew, who believed that what Tyler had done was wrong and that I deserved a chance to fight back. I cried for an hour after he left. Not sad tears. Angry tears. Determined tears. The kind of tears that mean you're done being a victim and ready to be something else. But even with Claire's money and the church's help, I only had $35,000. I needed 10 times that amount. And I had 3 days left before I had to move out. 3 days before Tyler took possession and started his renovation. 3 days before I had to trigger everything and hope to God my plan would work. On day 28, I went back to the bank. Sandra saw me coming and waved me into her office immediately. Mrs. Chin, have you made a decision? I have. I want to formally notify the bank that I no longer own the property at 847 Maple Street. The deed was transferred to my nephew, Tyler Chin, 28 days ago. It's recorded at the county recorder's office. I thought you should know. Sandra's face remained professional, but I saw something flicker in her eyes. Respect, maybe. or recognition that she was watching someone refuse to go down without a fight. Mrs. Chin, you understand what this means? Once I submit this information, the bank will likely accelerate the loan. Your nephew will have to pay the full balance or face foreclosure. I understand completely. And you're sure this is what you want? I looked her dead in the eye. Sandra, my nephew stole my home with lies and legal tricks. He smiled while he did it. He called it business. So yes, I'm very sure. Because if he wants to play business, then let's play business. And in business, when you buy an asset, you inherit the debt that comes with it. I'm just making sure the bank knows who owns that debt now. Sandra nodded slowly. She typed something into her computer. I'll submit this to our loan review department today. They'll verify the deed transfer and review the loan agreement. If the due on sale clause applies, and I'm confident it does, Tyler will receive a demand letter within 7 business days. How long will he have to pay? 30 days from the date of the demand letter. After that, if he hasn't paid or refinanced, we'll file a notice of default and begin foreclosure proceedings. The whole process, from default to auction, typically takes 60 to 90 days in this state. 90 days. 3 months. That gave me 3 months to scrape together every dollar I could find, to prepare for the auction, to learn how to bid, to get ready for the fight of my life. Could I do it? I honestly didn't know. But I knew I had to try. I left the bank feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Not hope, exactly. Hope felt too fragile. This was something harder. Something colder. Determination. Purpose. The absolute certainty that I wasn't done yet. On day 29, Tyler showed up with his contractor and his girlfriend Kristen. They walked through the house like they owned it, which, legally, they did, talking about paint colors and flooring options, and whether to keep the original hardwood or cover it with trendy gray laminate. Tyler barely acknowledged me as I packed boxes in the corner of what used to be my living room. We'll stage it minimalist, he told Kristen. White walls, neutral furniture, maybe some fake plants. Buyers want to see themselves in the space, not someone else's life. Someone else's life. 40 years of memories reduced to clutter that blocked his profit margin. His phone rang. He answered it with that smooth, confident voice. Yeah, I'm at the property now. Possession tomorrow. Contractor starts Friday. We'll have it listed in 6 weeks, tops. He laughed at something the person said. No issues with the old lady. She's moving out quietly. No drama. No drama. He had no idea that drama was coming for him like a freight train with failed brakes. On day 30, moving day, I finished packing. Everything I owned fit into a small U-Haul truck that Claire had helped me rent. 40 years of life compressed into cardboard boxes and plastic bins. I'd found a 1-bedroom apartment across town, 600 square feet, thin walls, a view of a parking lot, $700 a month that would eat half my Social Security check. It was temporary. It had to be temporary. Because if my plan didn't work, if I couldn't get enough money, if I couldn't win the auction, this depressing little apartment would be my home until I died. And that thought was unbearable. Tyler arrived at exactly 5 p.m., right on schedule, with Kristen and a locksmith. He looked impatient, ready to get this over with so he could start making his money. I met him on the front porch, the same porch where Robert and I used to drink coffee and watch sunrises. All moved out. Tyler asked, not quite meeting my eyes. Yes. Good. Keys. I held them out. The house key, the garage key, the spare key I'd kept hidden under a garden rock for 30 years in case I ever locked myself out. Tyler snatched them from my palm like he was afraid I'd change my mind. Great. Locks are getting changed tonight anyway, but thanks. He turned to the locksmith. You can start now. I stood there for a moment, looking at the house. My house. The place where I'd raised my daughter and buried my husband and grown old. The place that held every important moment of my adult life. Tyler was already walking inside with the locksmith, already taking ownership, already erasing me. But as I turned to walk to my truck, I allowed myself the smallest smile. Because Tyler didn't know it yet, but the countdown had already started. In Sandra's office at the bank, in computer systems and loan departments, the machinery of financial consequence was already grinding into motion. And soon, very soon, that confident smile would disappear from Tyler's face like frost in the morning sun. I drove away from Maple Street without looking back. Not because it didn't hurt, it hurt like losing Robert all over again, but because I needed to focus forward. The next 90 days would determine everything. The next 90 days would either end with me homeless and broken, or with me walking back through that front door as the rightful owner, debt-free and victorious. The next morning, day 31, I woke up in my new apartment to the sound of someone's television blaring through the wall and a garbage truck beeping in the parking lot. I made coffee in a kitchen the size of a closet and sat on a folding chair because I hadn't unpacked yet. And then I called Sandra. Mrs. Chin. I was just about to call you. The loan review department processed your notification yesterday. They've confirmed the deed transfer. The demand letter is being sent to Tyler today via certified mail and email. He'll have 30 days to pay the full balance of $253,000. That includes the principal plus accrued interest and fees. My heart was racing. What if he doesn't respond? Then on day 31, we file a notice of default. That starts the official foreclosure process. He'll have another 15 days to cure the default. If he doesn't, we schedule the auction. When would the auction be? Approximately 60 to 75 days from today, depending on court schedules and notification requirements. 2.5 months. I had 2.5 months to become someone who could afford to buy a house. 2.5 months to gather hundreds of thousands of dollars. 2.5 months to transform from victim to victor. Thank you, Sandra, for everything. Mrs. Chin, I hope you get your house back. I really do. I spent that day researching foreclosure auctions. I learned that they're public events held on courthouse steps or in county offices. I learned that bidding starts at the loan balance plus fees, and that you typically need to pay in cash or cashier's check on the spot. I learned that investors and flippers watch foreclosure listings like hawks, always looking for deals. I learned that it's a fast, brutal process, 5 minutes of bidding that can determine someone's entire future. And I learned that I needed a lot more money than I had. Over the next week, I sold everything valuable I owned. Robert's collection of vintage fishing rods, gone to a sporting goods store for $1,200. The silver tea set my mother left me, melted down for $800. Robert's riding lawnmower, barely used since his death, $900 to a neighbor. Jewelry, old coins, a vintage typewriter, boxes of collectibles I'd been meaning to sell for years. Everything went. Each sale felt like cutting off a piece of my past, but I kept going because the future mattered more than sentiment. I had $48,000 now. Not even close to enough. Meanwhile, Tyler was living his best life. I knew because I drove past the house one evening, not to torture myself, but to see what was happening. There were construction dumpsters in the driveway. Tyler's truck parked out front. I could see lights on inside, hear the sound of power tools. He was renovating. He was investing money into improvements, confident that he'd be selling soon, confident that his $400,000 profit was just weeks away. He had no idea that a certified letter was waiting for him at the post office. No idea that his phone was about to ring with calls from the bank. No idea that the ground beneath his feet was already crumbling. On day 43, Tyler found out. I know because he called me. It was 8 p.m. on a Wednesday. I was eating microwaved soup in my depressing little apartment when my phone rang. Tyler's name on the caller ID. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Let him sweat. Hello. What did you do? His voice was tight with panic. What the hell did you do? I'm not sure what you mean, Tyler. The bank. They're saying I owe $250,000. They're saying the mortgage is due immediately. They're saying they'll foreclose if I don't pay. I took a slow sip of soup. Chicken noodle. Store brand. Oh, that. Well, Tyler, when you took ownership of the house, you took ownership of everything attached to it, including the mortgage. Didn't you know that? You told them. You sabotaged me. This is illegal. I'm calling my lawyer. Please do call your lawyer. And while you're at it, have them explain what a due-on-sale clause is. It's fascinating, really. See, most mortgages have this provision that says if the property changes hands, the bank can demand full payment. You got the deed, Tyler. Congratulations. But you also got the debt. And now the bank wants their money. From you. I can't pay $250,000. I don't have that kind of money. I know. Neither did I. Which is why I made my mortgage payments every month for 40 years. But you didn't want to make payments, did you? You wanted to flip the house for a quick profit. You wanted easy money. Well, guess what? Business isn't always easy. You taught me that. He was breathing hard. I could hear the panic in each breath. You can't do this. I'll deed it back to you. We'll fix this. You'll what, Tyler? Give me back the house you stole? With $250,000 in debt attached? No, thank you. I don't want it. You own it now. Legally. Just like you wanted. So you figure out how to pay for it. Auntie, please. Don't call me that. You lost the right to call me that when you kicked me out of my home. You've got 30 days, Tyler. Tick-tock. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From satisfaction. From the cold, hard pleasure of watching someone who'd hurt you realize they'd made a terrible mistake. But I couldn't celebrate yet, because Tyler losing the house wasn't enough. I needed to win it back. And I still didn't have nearly enough money. The foreclosure process ground forward with bureaucratic precision. Tyler tried everything. He called 3 different mortgage brokers trying to refinance. All rejected him because his credit score was in the gutter and he had no provable income. He tried to sell the house quickly, but no buyer would touch a property with an active foreclosure notice and a clouded title. He even tried to file for bankruptcy, but his lawyer told him it wouldn't stop the foreclosure, just delay it slightly. He was drowning, and I was building a life raft. I'd started attending foreclosure auctions as an observer, learning the process. I went to 3 different auctions over the next month, watching how they worked. The auctioneer would read the legal description of the property. Starting bid would be announced, always the loan balance plus fees. Then investors would raise their paddles, shouting numbers, pushing the price up in $5,000 or $10,000 increments. The whole thing took maybe 5 minutes per property. Fast. Brutal. Efficient. And the winner had to pay immediately, cashier's check or wire transfer, no exceptions. I needed to be ready. But I still only had $48,000. Then something unexpected happened. On day 67, 3 weeks before the scheduled auction, Pastor Michael called me. Evelyn, can you come to the church? There's someone who wants to meet you. I went that afternoon. In Pastor Michael's office, I found an elderly man I didn't recognize. He was maybe 80, well-dressed, with kind eyes and hands that shook slightly with age. His name was Harold, and he'd been attending services at the church for 50 years. Mrs. Chin, Harold said, Pastor Michael told me your story. About your nephew and the house. I hope you don't mind. I don't mind. I lost my wife 3 years ago. Cancer. She wanted to stay home, die in the house where we raised our kids. But her nephew convinced us to move to a nursing facility, said it was for the best. Then he took the house. Sold it. We never got a penny. She died in a sterile room that smelled like disinfectant instead of her garden. I've regretted it every day since. I saw tears in his eyes. I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry. Just win. Get your house back. And let me help. He handed me an envelope. It's a personal loan. No interest. Pay me back when you can. Or don't. Just get your home back and prove that sometimes the good guys win. Inside the envelope was a cashier's check for $200,000. I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. This stranger, this man I'd never met, was handing me the weapon I needed to fight back. $200,000. Combined with what I already had, I'd have almost $250,000. Enough to bid. Enough to win. I can't accept this, I whispered. It's too much. Yes, you can. And you will. Because you're going to win, Mrs. Chen. And when you do, You're going to walk back into that house, and you're going to live there until you're ready to leave on your own terms. That's how this story ends. That's the only way this story ends. 3 weeks later, on a cold Tuesday morning in December, I stood on the courthouse steps with a cashier's check for $275,000 in my purse. The foreclosure auction was starting in 5 minutes. There were about 20 people gathered, mostly investors with clipboards and calculators, looking bored and efficient. And there was Tyler. He looked terrible. Unshaven. Dark circles under his eyes. He'd lost weight. When he saw me, his face twisted with rage and desperation. He started toward me, but a courthouse security guard stepped between us. Tyler just stood there, 20 feet away, staring at me with pure hatred. The auctioneer stepped forward and began reading the legal description. 847 Maple Street. Single-family residence. Being sold as is, all sales final. Minimum bid $260,000, the loan balance plus fees. My heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. And then the auctioneer said the words that would determine my entire future. Do I hear an opening bid of $260,000? Here's what I want you to think about. What does justice actually cost? Is it measured in dollars and auction bids? Or is it measured in sleepless nights and sold heirlooms and the kindness of strangers who believe you deserve a second chance? And when you finally get that chance, when you're standing on courthouse steps with everything you have left clutched in your hands, ready to fight for what was stolen from you, does the fact that you had to fight at all mean the system is broken? Or does the fact that you can fight at all mean there's still hope? An investor raised his paddle first. $260,000, he called out, his voice flat and businesslike, like he was ordering coffee instead of bidding on someone's entire life. The auctioneer nodded. I have $260. Do I hear $265? This was it. The moment everything came down to. 3 months of planning, of scraping together every dollar, of sleepless nights and sold memories and borrowed hope. My hand shook as I raised my paddle. $265,000. Tyler's head snapped toward me. His face went pale. He hadn't expected this. He'd thought I was just there to watch him suffer, to witness his downfall. He had no idea I was there to take back what was mine. The first investor countered immediately. $270. My throat was dry. My heart hammered against my ribs. $275. Another investor jumped in, a woman in a business suit with a clipboard. $280. I felt panic rising. I had $275 in my purse. That was it. That was everything. If the bidding went higher, I was done. Game over. But I couldn't let them see my fear. I raised my paddle again, calling out with more confidence than I felt. $285. The auctioneer's voice cut through the cold December air. I have $285. Do I hear $290? The first investor looked at his partner, whispered something, then shook his head and lowered his paddle. Out. The woman with the clipboard hesitated, then called out, $290. My mind raced. I was out of money. But if I dropped out now, I lost everything. The house would go to this stranger, and I'd spend the rest of my life in that terrible apartment, knowing I'd come this close and failed. I thought about Harold, the elderly man who'd given me $200,000 because his wife died in the wrong place. I thought about Claire sending me every penny she had. I thought about Pastor Michael and the church community rallying around me. I thought about 40 years of memories being erased by gray laminate and subway tile. And I thought about Tyler standing there, watching, hoping I'd fail so at least he wouldn't be the only one who lost. I raised my paddle one more time. My voice came out stronger than I expected. $300,000. It was a bluff. A complete, desperate bluff. I didn't have $300,000. I had $275. But sometimes in poker, you bet everything on a hand you can't win and hope the other players fold first. The woman with the clipboard looked at me, then at her notes, then at the house description in her paperwork. She was calculating. Running numbers. Comparing the bid to the property value, factoring in renovation costs and resale potential. The silence stretched out for what felt like hours, but was probably 10 seconds. Then she lowered her paddle. I'm out. The auctioneer scanned the crowd. I have 300,000. Going once. No one moved. The other investors had already decided the price was too high for a property that would need work. Tyler stood frozen, his face a mask of disbelief and rage. Going twice. This was happening. This was actually happening. After everything, the betrayal, the fear, the desperate scramble for money, the 3 months of living in limbo, I was about to win. I was about to take back my home. Sold to bidder number 47 for $300,000. The gavel came down. That sound, that sharp, final crack of wood on wood, was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. More beautiful than wedding bells. More beautiful than my daughter's first cry. Because it was the sound of justice. Imperfect justice, expensive justice, but justice nonetheless. Tyler made a noise, something between a shout and a sob. No, this is bullshit. She set this whole thing up. This is fraud. The auctioneer didn't even look at him. Sir, this is a legal foreclosure auction. All sales are final. If you have complaints, take them up with your attorney. A security guard moved toward Tyler. He was shaking, his hands clenched into fists. For a moment, I thought he might actually try to hit someone. But then something in him broke. His shoulders sagged. His face crumpled. He looked at me one last time, not with anger now, but with something worse. Defeat. Complete and total defeat. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd of courthouse staff and lawyers and people dealing with their own legal nightmares. I never saw him again. The auction official approached me with paperwork. Congratulations, ma'am. I need payment within 1 hour. Cashier's check or wire transfer. I have a cashier's check. I pulled the envelope from my purse with trembling hands. $275,000. 25,000 short. The official looked at the check, then at his paperwork, then at me. Ma'am, your winning bid was 300,000. This check is for 275. My stomach dropped. Of course I'd gotten so caught up in the bidding, so determined not to lose, that I'd bid money I didn't have. Stupid. So incredibly stupid. I can get the rest. I just need a few days. A week, maybe. I can. Ma'am, payment is due within 1 hour. If you can't pay the full amount, the sale goes to the next highest bidder. The woman with the clipboard. She'd bid 290. If I couldn't pay, she'd get the house for 10,000 less than my bid. And I'd lose everything. All of it. The money, the effort, the hope. Gone. I felt tears burning in my eyes. After everything, I was going to fail because of $25,000. Because I'd gotten emotional and bid too high. Because I'd let my desperation override my math. Mrs. Chin. I turned. Harold was there. The elderly man who'd loaned me the 200,000. He'd been in the crowd the whole time, watching. Waiting. You bid 300? I did. I'm so sorry. I got caught up. I didn't mean to. He pulled out his phone. What's the payment office number? The auction official handed him a card. Harold dialed, spoke to someone for maybe 2 minutes, then hung up. They'll receive a wire transfer for $25,000 within 30 minutes. From me. Consider it part of the loan. I couldn't speak. Couldn't process what was happening. This stranger had already given me $200,000. Now he was giving me $25,000 more? Why? I finally whispered. Why would you do this for me? Harold's eyes were wet. Because my wife died in the wrong place. And I have money I'll never spend and no one to leave it to. And because sometimes, Mrs. Chin, the universe gives you a chance to make one thing right, even if you can't fix your own mistakes. Let me do this. Please. The wire transfer went through 23 minutes later. I signed approximately 47 pieces of paperwork. And then, exactly 3 months and 12 days after Tyler had stolen my home with a lie and a forged smile, I owned it again. Free and clear. No mortgage. No debt. No one who could take it from me ever again. I drove to Maple Street that afternoon. The house looked different. Tyler had gotten about halfway through his renovations before the foreclosure hit. The kitchen cabinets were torn out, leaving exposed plywood and dangling wires. There were holes in the drywall where he'd started removing old fixtures. Paint cans and drop cloths were scattered through the living room. It was a mess. A disaster. But it was my disaster now. I walked through each room slowly, taking inventory of the damage and the work that would need to be done. In the bedroom, I found something that made me stop. Tyler had painted one wall a trendy gray color, that influencer gray that's supposed to make houses sell faster. But he'd only finished half the wall before running out of money or time or hope. The line where gray met the original cream color bisected the wall like a scar, like physical proof of where his ambition had crashed into reality. I ran my hand along that line, feeling where one color ended and another began. This wall needed to be fixed. The kitchen needed to be rebuilt. The holes needed to be patched. It would take months of work and thousands more dollars I barely had. But this house was mine, and I would fix it. One wall at a time. One room at a time. For as long as it took. I hired a contractor, a good one this time, recommended by Pastor Michael, who gave me a payment plan I could actually afford. We worked through Christmas and into January. New cabinets in the kitchen. Proper drywall repair. Fresh paint throughout, but cream this time, not gray. My colors. My choices. My home. Claire visited in February with my grandchildren. They ran through the house like they owned it, which in a way they did. This house would be theirs someday. Really theirs. Legitimately theirs. Not stolen, not tricked, but inherited properly from a mother who'd fought to keep it in the family. Mom, Claire said as we sat on the porch drinking coffee, watching the kids play in the yard, I'm so proud of you. When Tyler kicked you out, I thought that was it. I thought you'd lost. But you didn't give up. I almost did, I admit it. About 100 times. Every time I looked at my bank account. Every time I woke up in that terrible apartment. Every time I thought about how much easier it would be to just let go and accept what happened. But you didn't. No, I didn't. Because your father didn't raise me to give up. And because you deserve to inherit this house the right way, not by watching your mother get robbed and doing nothing about it. Claire was quiet for a moment. Have you heard from Tyler? I shook my head. No. His mother called once, Jean. She apologized. Said she didn't know what he'd done until it was over. Said she'd always thought her son was just unmotivated, but she'd never realized he was cruel. She cried. I felt bad for her. It's not her fault her son turned out the way he did. Do you know where he is? Last I heard, he was living with a friend somewhere across town. No job. No money. His credits destroyed from the foreclosure. He'll carry that for 7 years. Every time he tries to rent an apartment or get a loan or even get a credit card, that foreclosure will show up. It'll follow him. The consequences of what he did will follow him for a long time. Good, Claire said simply. He deserves it. Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. I'd stopped thinking about what Tyler deserved and started focusing on what I'd earned. Peace. Security. A home that was legally, completely, undeniably mine. Spring came. I planted tomatoes in the garden, the same varieties I'd been growing for 30 years. I bought new kitchen towels to replace the ones I'd packed away during the move. I hung pictures back on the walls, Robert and me on our wedding day, Claire at her college graduation, the grandkids at the beach. The nail holes matched the old marks perfectly. Like the pictures had never left. Like that terrible 3 months had been a bad dream. But it hadn't been a dream. It had been real. And sometimes, late at night when I couldn't sleep, I'd think about how close I'd come to losing everything. If Sandra at the bank hadn't explained the due on sale clause. If Harold hadn't believed in me enough to loan me $200,000. If the bidding had gone higher than $300,000. If any one of 100 small things had gone differently, I'd still be in that apartment and Tyler would have won. But he didn't win. And that matters. That matters so much. In June, 6 months after the auction, I got a letter. It was from Tyler. No return address. Postmarked from 2 states away. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a single page, handwritten in messy cursive. Aunt Evelyn, it began. Not Auntie. Just Aunt. Formal. Distant. I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I've had 6 months to think about what I did, and I still don't fully understand why I did it. I told myself it was just business. That you were old and wouldn't need the house much longer anyway. That I was taking an opportunity that presented itself. I convinced myself I wasn't doing anything wrong because it was legal. But it wasn't legal. It was fraud. And even if it had been legal, it was wrong. Morally wrong. I stole from you. I lied to you. I kicked you out of your home and smiled while I did it. I don't know how to live with that. I don't know how to be the person who did that. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm just saying I'm sorry. For whatever that's worth. Which is probably nothing. Tyler. I read that letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it in a drawer in Robert's old desk. I didn't respond. Didn't call. Didn't write back. Not because I was still angry, though maybe I was a little, but because Tyler's guilt was his to carry, not mine to absolve. He wanted forgiveness so he could feel better. But some things you don't get to feel better about. Some mistakes you live with. I'd chosen to live with the memory of fighting back. He'd have to live with the memory of what he'd tried to take. Summer turned to fall. The 1-year anniversary of the day Tyler had shown up with coffee and pastries, and lies came and went. I marked it by baking cookies with my grandchildren in my kitchen, in my house, surrounded by my things and my memories and my hard-won peace. People sometimes ask me if it was worth it. The stress, the fear, the months of uncertainty, the money spent, the emotional cost of fighting back. And I tell them the truth. It was worth every sleepless night, every dollar scraped together, every moment of doubt. Because at 72 years old, I learned something I'd never fully understood before. I learned that you're never too old to fight, never too tired to stand up, never too defeated to try one more time. Tyler thought I was just an old woman who'd be easy to push around. He thought I'd sign his papers and accept my fate and fade quietly into whatever small space he left for me. He thought being family meant I'd forgive him. He thought being 72 meant I was weak. He was wrong about all of it. I'm 73 now. I still live in the house on Maple Street. I still drink coffee on the front porch and watch sunrises. I still grow tomatoes in the garden and mark my grandchildren's heights on the kitchen door frame. I still sleep in the bedroom I shared with Robert, and sometimes I swear I can feel him there, proud of me for fighting, glad that I didn't let some smooth-talking con artist take what we built together. And sometimes, when I'm pulling weeds or baking cookies or just sitting quietly in my living room, I think about that day on the courthouse steps. I think about raising my paddle and bidding $300,000 I didn't have. I think about the sound of that gavel coming down. I think about Tyler's face as he realized he'd lost. And I smile. Not because I'm cruel. Not because I enjoyed watching him suffer. But because I won. Against the odds, against the lawyers, against my own doubt and fear and the voice in my head that said I was too old and too poor and too powerless to fight back. I won. And if a 72-year-old widow with $7,000 in savings and a mountain of debt can take back her home from the nephew who stole it, then maybe you can fight back too. Maybe you can stand up to whoever hurt you, whoever lied to you, whoever took something precious and smiled while they did it. Maybe you're not as powerless as you feel. Maybe the systems that seem designed to crush you can also be used to fight back. Maybe justice is expensive and imperfect and unfair, but maybe it's still possible. Maybe you're stronger than you think. I know I was. So here's my question for you, and I want you to really think about this. If someone took something precious from you, your home, your dignity, your sense of safety, would you fight to get it back? Would you be willing to risk everything on the chance that you might win? Would you raise that paddle even if your hands were shaking? Would you bet on yourself when everyone else had counted you out? Because here's what I learned. The world is full of Tylers. Smooth talkers. Con artists. People who think being vulnerable means being weak. People who see kindness as an opportunity and trust as a weapon to be used against you. And if you let them win, if you accept what they've done and fade quietly into whatever corner they've pushed you into, then they were right about you all along. But if you fight back, even if you're scared, even if you're not sure you'll win, even if everyone tells you to just let it go and move on, then you're proving something important. You're proving that being knocked down doesn't mean staying down. That losing a battle doesn't mean losing the war. That sometimes, if you're stubborn enough and smart enough and desperate enough, David really can beat Goliath. I'm living proof of that. So I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever had to fight to take back something that was stolen from you? Are you in that fight right now? Because if you are, I want you to know you're not alone. And if you're thinking about giving up, about accepting defeat because the fight seems too hard, I want you to remember something. I'm a 73-year-old woman who took on a con artist, a broken system, and my own fear, and I won. If I can do it, so can you. Hit that like button if this story moved you. Subscribe to this channel because I share stories like this every week, stories about people who refuse to stay victims, who fought back against betrayal and won. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's going through their own battle and needs to know that victory is possible. And remember, you're never too old, too poor, too tired, or too beaten down to fight for what's yours. The gavel hasn't fallen yet. The auction isn't over. You still have time to raise your paddle and bet on yourself. Trust me. I know. My name is Evelyn Chin. I'm 73 years old. I live in the house I've lived in for 40 years. And nobody is ever taking it from me again. Now go fight for what's yours. And when you win, come back and tell me about it. I'll be here. Right here on Maple Street. Drinking coffee on my porch. In my house. Where I belong. Thank you for listening to my story. And thank you for being here.